In this episode, I'm going to answer some of your questions, so stick around. Hello, fellow dorks and dorkettes, and welcome to It Came From My Side of the Laundry Room. In this episode, I answer your questions that you asked me. A few weeks ago in a video, I asked you guys to submit some questions to me, just as a Ask Me Anything type of deal. I just thought it would be fun and just a nice way to interact with everybody. So, without further ado, let's get to the first question. Looking at my phone here. Here's a little thing. It's got Boba Fett. But anyway, number one. Dead Maniac 75 RIP, rest in peace, asks, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Rob. Toy-wise, what are your thoughts on any store exclusives? Well, I have no problem with store exclusives as long as they're readily available. What we're running into with the G.I. Joe Classified with Target, I think that's very unacceptable. I can only speak for my local Target, but it feels like they only get one case, and does it even make it to the shelf? I don't think so. I think that the employees are either taking it to scalp them, or they're passing them off to the local toy store we have here in town, and then he's hiking up the price and selling them in his store and online. Because I have yet to see a single one at any Target. I have yet to see a G.I. Joe figure at Target at all. Even the original run of Duke, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, that run. Haven't seen any of them. It torques me quite a bit because Beachhead's one of my favorite characters, and I'm not going to be able to get them. Firefly, one of my favorite characters, not going to be able to get them. So I hope there's a grander plan here that they'll re-release them in waves down the road, but how frequently are these waves even going to be coming out? Hasbro seems to be taking their final time releasing them. But, there's other exclusives out there, like for a while, a timed exclusive were the Masters of the Universe Origins at Walmart. And I can find any one of them at any time, and it's great. I love them. They're great figures. They're readily available on the shelves. That's the way it feels like it should be with any exclusive. Even Walmart with the Ghostbusters toys. I know people online had trouble getting them, but as far as in the stores, they're always available. But I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, please hit me up in the comments and I'll answer it how you meant it. I think that's how you meant it. So I hope that's how you meant it. So let's get on to questions 2 through 6. These are all from Bucky749. Great guy. And he says, have fun on your time off, which I have to say I didn't take any time off per se. I still did videos over the time that I said I was taking off because I have fun making them. So I had time and I wanted to have fun. So I didn't really take a break. But anyway, here are some questions you can use for the video. Thank you, Bucky. So here we go. His first question is, favorite Christmas episode of a cartoon series? I think right off the top of my head, that would be Cobra Claws Are Coming to Town, the G.I. Joe episode. And yes, I'm biased to G.I. Joe, but it's just such a nutty Christmas story that it's almost perfect. You have Cobra, who shrinks down into little miniature versions of themselves to hide in toys that are being donated that end up at the G.I. Joe headquarters before they're distributed. So when they get to the G.I. Joe headquarters, they grow large again and burst out of the toys, and it's just madcap, crazy story, but I love it. Whenever I think of a Christmas cartoon special, that's one of the first things that pops into my head. His second question, favorite ninja video game? Tenchu Stealth Assassins for the PlayStation. I can't recall much about it because that was so many years ago, but I just remember loving that game, loving the ninja mechanics of it, and unlocking new abilities and stuff. I mean, it was very linear, but it was just so much fun for the time period. I'd love to find a port of it and play it again. Number 3, favorite Jerry Anderson TV series. Or Gary Anderson, sorry. To be honest, I haven't watched much of like Thunderbirds or was it Captain Scarlet. I haven't seen too many of them, but what I have seen, I've loved. I respect what he did so much. I mean, to create miniature sets and vehicles and the marionette puppets. I mean, that is love and dedication, and I respect that so much. I mean, I think it's such a neat concept, and I'd like to watch more of them one day. Number 4, a crossover that needs to happen is a comic book miniseries or a DVD movie. Whew. I feel like I haven't been into comics in quite some time, so a lot of the things I grew up with, we've kind of seen in one way, shape, or form. And I feel like in this day and age, there's been so many team ups and crossovers. But one that I would like to see as a movie one day would be the X-Men vs. Fantastic Four. And that's from a purely nostalgic place that I say that, because when I first started really collecting comics, not just being a casual reader, but someone going to the store every week and trying to get whatever I could, I stumbled upon the X-Men vs. Fantastic Four, and I was just so blown away by it. That and the X-Men vs. Avengers. But I'd rather see the Fantastic Four one because it had so much more emotion to it, because like Kitty Pryde was stuck in her phased form and she was trying to communicate with everybody. I mean, it just had a lot going on and was really cool. But like I said, that's from a nostalgic place that I pick that. Favorite episode of the TMNT? I'm actually going to go with the 2012 series, and my favorite episode, I'm going to give 2 of my favorite episodes from that and the reasons. One of them, I'm not sure the name of the episode, but the one where they're playing D&D in the dungeons or in the sewers, and they kind of get wrapped up into a real dungeon crawl with that Quail dude. I love that. I mean, that spoke to so many parts of my dork soul that I loved it. The second one is the one with the Dream Beavers, because they were the cartoon's version of the Doom Bears from the role-playing game. So I thought that was really neat that they were bringing in an aspect of the role-playing game, but just tweaking it for copyright reasons. I thought that was really awesome. So those are 2 for really silly reasons, but those are 2 of my favorite ones. So as soon as you asked that, those were the 2 that popped into my head. Bucky749 again asks, because he asked his brother Jeremy if he had any questions. And he said, I went ahead and asked Jeremy, my brother, who also shows on the channel Bucky749. He has a channel, everyone, so check it out. As well, if he had any questions, and here they are. My favorite Hot Wheels car as a kid. My favorite Hot Wheels car as a kid was, if I would have prepared better, I would have gotten it out. But it's this little white and blue striped one that was actually my father's that he gave me. And I want to say it's like Jackrabbit or something that it's called. It's just a little white sports car with light blue stripes, but was always my favorite. Favorite cartoon as kid and now. My favorite cartoon of all time? That's a really hard question. I mean, the easy answer would be G.I. Joe. I mean, Thundercats. G.I. Joe, Thundercats, Robotech are probably were my three favorites growing up. Now my favorite cartoons are anime, and they are My Hero Academia, Goblin Slayer. I'm watching one now called Fire Force that's really good. But, I mean, nowadays, as far as favorite cartoons, it's whatever anime I can get my hands on. Favorite arcade game? Again, that's a tough one. But I have to say the one that probably gets my quarters still today when I see it is the X-Men arcade game. Because I love playing Nightcrawler in it. I love the animation in it. The Capcom animation was inspired by the X-Men pilot cartoon, and I mean, just awesome. Any chance I can get to play Nightcrawler, I'm all for it. Favorite sports video game of all time? I'm not really into sports too much, but my favorite of all time, I think it was a Madden game on the Genesis. I would play that so much, and it was like one of the first games I remember that had speech in it. I can't remember the name of it, but it's really old, and I played the crud out of that when it was out. Okay, next question from Curtis Schultz. What are your favorite Christmas TV specials? My favorite TV Christmas specials would be Alvin and the Chipmunks Christmas, of course, the classic Rudolph by Rankin and Bass, and I think, I mean, there's other ones that I like, but those two are ones that I have to watch every year no matter what. So I'm just going to go with those two. Thanks, Curtis. Okay, Drunk Simeon asks, should the G.I. Joe movies have kept the characters in the original look of the 80s cartoon, and would it have made them at least nostalgic enough to have warranted more than one movie? Well, I didn't have a problem with them not looking 100% like they did in the comic book or cartoon or toy. But I think the thing that really ruined it for me was the whole power suits in the first movie. That just, right there, I tuned out. I just was not a fan. I mean, there could have been 101 different things that they could have done to made it more G.I. Joe-like than those power suits. As far as the second movie, I thought that did a better job. I mean, the only thing that, other than the power suits, that I disliked was probably Zartan. That he needed to be more like he was in the cartoon or comic book. But they weren't. The first one was abysmal, but the second one had a lot of cool things in it that harkened back more to the comic, in my opinion. So I liked that one a little bit more. Sebastian Blau. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. Did you watch A Flight of Dragons in the 1980s? And if yes, were you as freaked out as me by the bad guys voiced by James Earl Jones? I have to honestly say I saw it when it first came out on VHS, but I have not seen it since. But I do remember the villain that you're talking about, how a Hydra sprouted out of his back and his face was in the Hydra's chest. And yes, that is pretty freaky. That freaked me out. Of course, James Earl Jones, he did a great job voicing the character. And yeah, really freaked me out. Next question. My buddy Ninja Crypt asks, have you ever taken a head count of how many figures you own? If you haven't, be prepared to be surprised by the number. It's probably more than you think. I never have taken a head count of my figures. I'm sure it is a lot more than I even think, because a lot of them are in storage in bins hidden around the room. But let's see if I can do this without messing anything up. But like above this, I mean, we have a good deal of figures right here. So I'm sure there's a couple dozen there. There we go. So sorry for taking you on that journey, but that's right above me, so you guys don't get to see it too often. But no, I haven't, and I'm sure I would be shocked by how many I really have. Jay Stateham 1979 asks, do you think we'll ever see a modern update of the USS Flag? If we do, it would be in the retro line. I couldn't even fathom the classified line, how big that sucker would be for 6-inch figures. But if they ever did it with the retro line, I could see the HasLab doing that. The Hasbro, what do you call it? The Kickstarter thing that they have, where you pay up front for the toys, and if they get enough people, they make it. I mean, they've done some pretty big vehicles for like Star Wars that way. So, I mean, you never know. But the thing is, Hasbro needs to get more G.I. Joe out there on the shelves to get people interested. So it's just not the collectors. They need fresh. They need fresh meat to be buying the toys. I mean, they need kids, adults that are nostalgic, that aren't collectors. I mean, they need the toys on the shelves to drum up interest. So, I mean, as a collector, that would be awesome. But until they can get a bigger swath of people, I don't know. Okay, Venger Van Vanderbone V, it cuts off after that. I'm sorry, but your name is awesome. Very awesome. But his question is, 1, what was your first hard rock heavy metal band that you discovered and got into? See, that's kind of a trick question, because back in the 80s, we were having hard rock and lighter metal mixed into our top 40 stuff. So like the first ones I can remember buying were like Whitesnake and Motley Crue, but they were being played on top 40. So I don't really see that as like metal, because they were in the fabric of pop culture at the time. I think probably the first things that I got that were a little off the beaten path were Suicidal Tendencies. I went to a skate demo. People were skating on a half pipe, and they were playing Suicidal Tendencies, and I wanted to know what it was, and I asked, and I got the tapes after that. Like, How Will I Laugh Tomorrow When I Can't Even Smile Today? Join the Army, uh, Feel Like Shit, Deja Vu. So those albums were some of my first. Megadeth, I stumbled upon them, and I got this was a little bit later, but Rust in Peace. That was like the first thing I remember listening to, where it's like, ooh, this is the devil's music, and I'm a rebel, kind of thing. So those were probably my first two bands that none of my other friends were listening to, that I kind of stumbled upon and was listening to. And that was right around middle school age. What is your all-time favorite musical band or artist? This might be a total cop-out, but Led Zeppelin is my top band of all time. They're the band that no matter what mood I'm in, no matter what situation, I can listen to them back to back to back to back and have a great time. And yeah, I mean, that was a band that my parents were actually into, so I grew up with some of the records around the house and hearing them. So I won't say I discovered them. That was just kind of in my mythos already. So sorry, it seems like a cop out, but Led Zeppelin. Next question by Peter Angerone. Sorry again if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I'm horrible with names. What are your expectations of the Snake Eyes movie? My expectations for the Snake Eyes movie, I'm hoping they keep it small. I think it could be very successful if they keep it small and tell one story around a few key players. Of course, they can allude to G.I. Joe and make references to it, but if you keep it small and keep it a ninja movie for all intents and purposes, I think you could make it a very successful movie. I mean, maybe not in the theater whenever theaters open, but I could see it becoming kind of like a cult movie, like the movie Ninja Assassins or something. I mean, I doubt it would be as bloody as that movie, but, you know, a movie that people will just pop on the DVD or Blu-ray whenever and just watch some cool action. That's what I'm hoping. That's my expectations. What we get, who knows, but I hope it's good, and I hope it just tells a good story. It doesn't even need to be word for word the comic or word for word the cartoon or the toy. As long as they just tell a good story, I'm all for it. And again, I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong, which I'm sure I did. Okay, next is Paul Bowler. Great guy. His first question is, if you could go back in time and get one toy from your childhood that you wish you still had, which one would you choose? One that I still had. I mean, I do a whole series on the toys that I wish I still had. But the one, I know one I would get that I wish I had, and that would be the Cyclone bike from Robotech. But one that I still had. Wow. So many of them are popping into my mind, like the Hoth playset from Star Wars, or the Thunder Tank from G.I. Joe, or wow. I know one thing that pops to mind, just so I'm not sitting here pondering the whole time, but one thing that pops to mind, and it's not a toy, but something I wish I still had to this day. I had a poster of Lord of the Rings from the movie, from the cartoon Ralph Bakshi movie, and I wish I still had that. My grandparents got it for me in Florida, of all places, and I doubt they even knew what it was. but they got it for me, and I had that poster on my wall, and I loved it. I would look at it every night before I fell to sleep and see Gollum down in the corner and Aragorn raising his sword high in the center of it. I mean, I loved that movie growing up, and I just loved that poster. So I know it's not a toy, but I could go on for hours about toys I still had, but that's something I wish I still had to this day, and go back in time and stop myself from getting rid of it, or my parents getting rid of it, or whoever. I don't even know the fate of it, but I wish I still had it. What's your favorite comic book or cartoon superhero team? My favorite superhero team of all time is the John Byrne, Chris Claremont X-Men. I love those comics. I love rereading the graphic novels. I mean, there's just something so realistic about them, and even a little bit further into the X-Men, like in the 80s and early 90s, where they just seemed like normal people that I wasn't getting in other comics. You knew every summer that you would see the X-Men pool party. You knew that you would see Wolverine out of his costume just walking around with his cowboy hat and either a tank top or a flannel shirt and his bell bottoms. I mean, there's just something so realistic and grounded about them. And the team was awesome. I mean, I'm a huge Nightcrawler fan, huge Wolverine fan. And having them two on the same team for the years that they were, that's my favorite team of all time. And even X-Men later in the early 90s, like I said, when you had Longshot on the team and things like that. Love it. Love it. Big X-Men fan. Number 3. Which comic book or cartoon character would you like to see made into a big budget movie? Wow. A lot of my favorites have already been made into movies, from Hellboy to Sin City, X-Men, which they could make better X-Men movies, hands down. Watchmen. There is a comic, independent, from Eclipse Comics back in the day, called Scout. And it's about a Native American in a post-apocalyptic world. And his first miniseries was called The Four Monsters. And he is battling 4 monsters from Native American folklore that have embedded themselves into this post-apocalyptic world. I think that would be an awesome movie. It chock full of mysticism, action, character beats. I mean, I think that would be awesome movie. I would hands down love to see that. So thank you for your questions, Paul. Okay. Here's Bucky749 again, helping me out, asking more questions. Here are a few more, he says. What was the first Godzilla movie you ever saw? Godzilla vs. Mothra. Saw it on TV, afternoon cinema, and I was just enthralled the whole time. Believe me, as a kid, and even now, I get bored of the human parts of it, but as soon as you throw monsters up on the screen, I'm all for it. I love it so much. But it was Godzilla vs. Mothra. I don't know which one or what the real title was back in the day, but that's who Godzilla fought against, and it had the little singing fairy girls and everything. Which giant monster had the better cartoon series, King Kong or Godzilla? FYI, Godzilla and King Kong both had 2 cartoon series, and the movie King Kong Escapes is based on the original King Kong cartoon. I did not know that. I didn't even know that there was an original King Kong cartoon. Excuse me. So, I'm going to have to say Godzilla, the old Hanna-Barbera with Godzuki. I love that cartoon. Love the giant monsters that he fought. I even love little Godzuki flying around. So just by default, I'm going to have to say Godzilla. And I even liked, if you're counting this as the second Godzilla cartoon, the Godzilla American Godzilla cartoon, because that did so much more for that version of Godzilla than that crappy movie did. Number 3, Spider-Man or Batman, as in which is your favorite? I love both. Both are iconic. But I'm going to have to say Batman, because I really, when I was getting into comics, was drawn to the darker aspects of it. The first Batman comic I read was A Brave and the Bold, where he teamed up with Etrigan. That was my first Batman comic I remember reading. I think it was from the 70s. I got it at a used bookstore. And there was such weird imagery in that, because they're fighting a magical gang and with Etrigan. I mean, so I'm going to have to say Batman just for pure nostalgia. I'm drawn to the darker aspects of it. But I love Spider-Man too. I love the teenage Spider-Man dilemmas and issues. I think that's great. But unfortunately, even though I'm a Marvel fan, I'm going to have to go with Batman. So thank you, Bucky. And that's it. That is all the questions. So hope I didn't bore you guys too much. I hope you had fun. I hope I gave interesting enough answers. I hope. So anyway, we're going to end that here. If you like this episode, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them, and I love getting back to everybody. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this or any of the episodes that YouTube is recommending down here, please hit subscribe. And you hit that little bell icon, you'll be notified whenever there's a new episode. So until next time, thanks for watching, thanks for the questions, keep being rad, and stay dorky.